Great. Thomas, we didn't forget you. We're both having a crazy week and it's hard to find time. So we'll come back to our sitting down. We'll probably, I don't know, your week is probably,
I'm free right now.
we can figure it out after, but.
Yeah, figure it out.
Okay, so these are going into your file. For Al.
I told Isla your house is gonna have quatrefoils on it, and she was really excited. Karen taught my daughter how to, punch out the quatrefoil shape. Like, she came home like 3 years old talking about quatrefoils.
Probably the only kid in that class that remembers that word.
I didn't even know the name
Cool.
for it. It's like, oh, that's cool. That makes sense.
In India, we call them rosettes. Have you heard that term?
I've heard rosette, but applied to other things.
Rosette, and
Not
then
for-
I
not for
had to change it when I came.
A rosette is usually,
More polylobed.
yeah, like a lotus in a ring. Is a rosette.
They already had lotuses
So
covered,
these are your
so.
top-
Yeah, that's right. There's a call on that term already.
Quatrefoil is a sign of wealth.
Is it?
Yes, because it was so
Oh,
difficult
then
to make
maybe we should not.
Wait till the house is reassessed for taxes and then.
Yeah.
It's because it was so difficult to make out of stone.
Right.
It was very
Oh.
well labor intensive slash
had to be-
expensive to make out of
yeah,
stone. So that's why they're always on like
Oh, that's really
churches
cool.
and fancy buildings. And things.
Thanks, Sean.
Trefoils also?
I think both. Yeah. Both
I see them all over the
I actually, I think
like
the
now I can't
trifoil, the
not
trifoil is
notice
probably
them.
more difficult to make than the quatrefoil because you
The
don't have
angles,
the
right.
symmetry.
Yeah.
No, you can get them at Home Depot.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a whole census
Yes.
of quatrefoils in the village.
You're gonna go grab them?
Mhm.
Do we know that the chair is drawing?
We do. He is. It's 8:03. We'll give him 2 more minutes. and
He's
then-
finishing a cigarette. He'll be here in a minute.
Actually, I'm gonna check out.
Sean, did we like not have what you wrote here?
Mhm.
I'm not finding.
It is
I don't know if it's.
in that.
Oh, it's in the back. That's why. Okay, here we go. Things in the back.
Is that the next version?
Yeah, so this is some of what Sean wrote up for one of the sections, like the about section basically.
Right.
That maybe it doesn't belong in the back, but we've reordered things. We're trying to make it more.
Well, actually, some of the stuff you
user-friendly.
had was in the front.
And we're gonna have,
and
Some
some
is
was
in the
moved.
front, some is in the back.
We've moved
It's a
stuff all
combination
around.
of
So we
two
kind of
different things.
consolidated.
But
Yeah.
this is going to go in the front because we're
Yeah.
explaining who we are. and what
Yeah.
we do.
a little preamble.
And then are you going to switch to a digital system of submissions?
That would be awesome, but, well, we're gonna have digital files, so
'Cause
we're
everything
moving in the right
now-
direction, I know,
yeah.
we still need to just do it online.
Because a lot of the sort of transactions happen digitally and then we print it out, so.
Right.
Right.
How,
It's archaic.
That's the thing right now, like with the planning board, did you have to put an application to the
yeah,
planning board?
the zoning board, yeah.
So you can fill out the thing,
Right.
but you can't submit it to them.
Right.
So you still end up having to print it out.
Yeah.
So we decided to forego the fill out ability on our form because it's very time consuming.
I'm surprised.
And we're just gonna wait until there's some way that you can submit it as well, and then we'll probably
There's
redo that.
no sort of small startup out of Silicon Valley which is building like it is prohibitive for
Yeah.
an individual village to do it. But
Right.
there are enough of these counties and sort of submission systems that you could create a platform. And it doesn't matter what you're submitting as long as there's a system of
Yeah.
receipt.
There's some ways of there's some really easy ways of like using like even companies like SurveyMonkey and things like that where they kind of you can just reskin
Right.
ways of like capturing data, but then you're dependent on people uploading it, and then once it's submitted, who does it go to? Does it go to the it'd have to go to an email address and all other things. So it's probably something that will happen
We don't have the money.
at a point, but it's not
We
really.
need money.
Also,
We're
we
gonna
have to make
But you
ourselves
can- but see,
available
there
for
are,
all.
but
But I
the point
think
I'm trying
that's
to
a
make
good
is you don't
idea.
need money as much as, so if you look at, there's a system called Box,
Mhm.
which basically, I think IBM just bought recently. So you can submit all the plans and you can all access to it. You just have an individual account.
Right.
And it's all cataloged, so you know who viewed it. So it's,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
so,
Is it like
But then we
Google
also have
Docs?
people who don't even have digital copies of their plans.
right.
Yeah.
That are like either handed to them by somebody at Home Depot or they're like drawn on a.
Napkin.
Yes,
Yeah.
that happens.
I mean, I drew my,
Can you-
for my building permit for my bathroom, I drew everything on graph paper. And it's like what I do for a living and I still use it to do it. I still just drew the whole thing on the paper, so. But yeah, maybe eventually.
So I'm not getting an answer from Al, and we're now at
Can we start
8:06.
without him?
So are we, I
Well,
find that we have a quorum.
so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're, just give me a second to get up here. And,
I keep telling myself I'll bring a laptop. I keep forgetting.
Okay, so we're opening the meeting at 8:06. Our additional voting session and public hearing. Okay, so for the public assembled, confirming that Karen and Dinesh have turned in the receipt for having sent certified notices to their adjoining neighbors. Do you have updated drawings for us?
I don't, I mean, I basically, when we left, the only sort of item that was there was that you were going to be talking about the brick, half brick, which is called the Boston half brick, which I'm going to be, they didn't have it at Home Depot, so I'm going to have to order it. But there were no changes from a design perspective that we talked about.
It's really good.
And then for the vestibule, I think I spoke to the company that makes it. You know, they are going to start charging me money to start talking about it. So for me, I think, you know, it is, I'm going with the drawing and the plan that we have here, and we're going to map pretty much close to this. But in terms of like the doors and windows that open and close, that was the other question that I remember from the last conversation. I'll just have to go into that process to figure out like which one's open and which one's closed. This was the roof, so this is the type of roof. Do we have to specify color
No.
right now? We
Nope.
don't,
We're
right?
fine. We don't do color.
All right. So, yeah. That's right, yeah, we pretty much have, sort of gone with everything. And then, yes, I did speak to the architect about the front face and exposing it under the vinyl. I think that's one that you had brought. I think we'll have to figure out what the condition is.
Right.
Once we lift that up, we'll have a better sense of what exists there.
This is the application, right? Where are the drawings? That's
I
only.
think they're the same.
It's the same.
That's in the file.
It's the same as this?
Yes.
There is no change. Okay. All right. So, we're open, the public hearing is
Yes.
open? Okay. So, does anybody want to look at the drawings?
Members of the public.
Yeah. Once? Okay.
Easy.
I will, is there any comment from the public? Anybody want to comment? We have a microphone, sir. Okay.
What a polite topic.
All right, so I hereby close the public comment section of the public hearing. and I will open it up to the board members as far as questions and/or comments.
I'm just noting from last time, items that we've discussed. And I think that Sean and, I didn't hear the conversation, so I was getting rid of notes. The cementitious board, what the resolution was.
So basically, he did mention that we should look at if there's a way to preserve or actually demarcate the difference between the new and the old. And like I said, I would love for the wood underneath to be in really good condition. We'll only find out once we take the one line. And I think it's the east facing, which is the front on Fishkill Avenue. So I'll definitely try my best to see what we can do to preserve that.
Yeah, and that was also the only facade that wasn't gonna have
Right.
changes to window,
Correct.
size or scale or anything. So, yeah, I think it'd be great. I mean, I know that that's something that we're always hoping to preserve, is the actual materials themselves as best we can. There are certain limits to that, but,
So, I'm sorry.
yes.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, but that would be a great way of at least
Right.
being able to incorporate some of it. I don't think that there's a way of elegant, I mean, even if, I don't know, I think it would be very difficult to have a transition on any of the other facades from,
You're right.
from, man-made material to wood. If, in the event that you take off all the vinyl and all of the wood is absolutely pristine on all facades, that would be fantastic, but I just think that so much change has to occur that feathering,
Right.
even feathering in new wood with old wood could be very.
We do have a door going in and extra windows.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
thing you're taking.
everything's gonna be changing, and
Yeah.
I just think it could become very.
But
difficult.
I just want to sort of say that I would love to figure out a way to have that, because that's the reason why we bought this. We wanted to preserve a part of it.
Mhm.
And the addition is purely a functional thing. So we will sort of work in sort of keeping the sentiment of that common. I would like to see what I can do to preserve that.
So can I just ask a question to make sure I understand what the guidance that Sean is giving? What I think you're suggesting is that on the primary facade, on the east facade, the goal is to preserve wood. To the extent that that can be done, it will.
Mhm.
It's the direction that we're giving the applicant that once they take off the vinyl, do they need to come back and let us know if they're keeping it or taking it, or are we saying we approve two options for you? Keeping the wood, or if you find that the wood is in poor condition, removing it and leaving that at discretion?
I don't really feel that it's necessary to us to review it again. I mean, I think that our intention and the intention of the applicant are aligned, so I trust them to make a decision. I certainly wouldn't want it to cause any trouble.
Excuse me.
Okay, so am I understanding that the application right now is for the existing siding or the existing surfaces that are not being changed, that, well, are they going to be changed to hardy plank? At least that's what the drawing shows.
Yes. So on the north and the south side, we'll be replacing with the hardy plank, and then the new one obviously would have.
On the west.
Okay, on the north and on the south and on the west is going to be hardy plank.
Right.
But the east elevation is going to.
We're gonna see what condition that is.
Under the
Yeah,
vinyl.
it's we're definitely getting rid of the vinyl. So
The other thing to keep in mind as well is if you're gonna, once you remove the vinyl from the main, well, from all of the facades at once, even if there's damaged wood on the main facade, you might be able to harvest
Yeah.
some wood off of the
Right.
back facades or other places where you're not going to be exposing wood.
Totally open to that. So is there an example of somewhere in the village where someone has done this successfully? This
Yeah.
kind of
No, yeah.
preserving the, so I'd love to go and.
Right on 7 Fair Street.
Okay.
It's like a kind of grayish.
Yeah, it's like a slate, just dark blue,
Yeah.
gray.
And they actually, that project,
Seven Bears games.
we had
Oh, yes.
approved to have them remove the siding and put up hardy plank, but then once they took off the siding, the wood was in such good condition that they were able to keep it.
Okay.
And then Orchard
All
and
through the
Chickasaw?
sides.
They made Chickasaws, yeah.
Number 3.
And is that Brotherhood?
Yes, brother.
Yeah. They also have a quattro coil.
Yes.
So you guys can do secret handshake. Yeah, so it's not, I mean, it's not uncommon.
Got it.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions or comments?
Where's the quatrefoil in this house?
You're adding them. Now you can add this to your list. So maybe where the wagon wheels were, there's gonna be quatrefoils
Oh,
now.
oh, oh,
and then
oh,
a
oh,
oh.
more side bracket.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yes.
I would just like to say that I appreciate the effort that you've made to respond to board feedback, and your flexibility with the design. I think that, considering when we started, that initial rendering that you brought in had a very suburban feel to me. And it was sort of harder to see the form of the original structure. And I think that the compromises that you've made in your design based on our feedback gets us closer to the goal of being able to read the original and having the scale of the modification still feel like a village house. And I think Al had some concerns about windows on the rear. I have spent a lot of time walking back and forth in the last week and really looking at the back of this building and feeling that while the public can see the rear of the structure, it's an angled and more limited view. So you're not seeing it straight on that facade. And so I feel more flexible about fenestration on that facade, and I think too to the precedent of buildings we discussed the last time we were all together, and specifically the Sandlands structure that added a lot of light on the back facade that was also additional.
Also too, at that distance, because I noticed as well this week walking back from the library, like I think at that distance and at that angle, a lot of that glass is going to kind of, in a lot of way, act as a mirror to this vegetation and everything around it. So it's going to seem like less of a wall and more of a nothing, which will not detract from.
We have the luxury of having some beautiful buildings around us, so the eye always goes there.
That is
Well-
true.
Well, we've approved other applications with similar
Well-
modifications, so.
But not necessarily this. We have in,
With the tray.
yeah, I'll state my concerns and, and then I'll leave it, anybody else has any comments and we'll go ahead and take a vote. My concern is that this is an addition. Agreed, it's an addition to an addition. But when the addition that this addition is being added to was added, they offset it to differentiate it from the main house. I think it could have been easily done here, and it wasn't. And I do have concern because that's, I mean, you talk about suburban, I mean, to me, this window configuration looks very suburban. And this, the glass enclosed vestibule also looks very suburban to me, at least from what I've seen from what you presented. So those are my concerns. So anybody have any other comments, questions?
Well, I guess I would just say that on the glass enclosure, I think about copper. I also think about 7 You have Fair Street, it's not on the main mast, but it's on the carriage house. That's sort of, no, because it turned out to be
The
wood.
shed
For
there?
years, I
Yeah.
perceived it as metal. I perceived it as having been glass, and it turned out, I mean, to have been greenhouse, and it turned out to have been shed, so I pulled that back. Can't think of another example. Ah, yes, I can. The 7, I think it's also 7, the bottom of Railroad, the little, in that brick row on Railroad, we approved a very modern, largely glass enclosed rear entrance on that structure, and it was also visible from a parking lot. So I think that we have analogous, or at least quite similar precedents to look at for approving that kind of design, especially on an addition.
Anybody else have any comments? Okay, Sean? Vote.
We need a motion
Oh, do I have a motion to approve the application?
as submitted, or as modified in our discussion, or we?
Those, what modification?
Well, I guess it's already been modified in the draft.
Yeah.
Okay. So motion to approve is submitted.
Well, I
Right?
guess, you know, the modification is that, that the front east elevation may in fact be,
Intact.
maybe
Retains wood.
retains as
Reserved.
wood. So
Okay.
we should note that.
So then are we approving the application as modified?
Well, yeah.
Because we
well,
just
this-
modified
no,
it?
Well,
that
isn't
it's
it
either-
with an alternative, because it's, if the wood underneath is not in good shape, I would imagine they'll go with coated wood, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's
That's
there's an
already-
alternative on the front.
That's already
From the
proposed.
front to side.
Before we get to motion, the only outstanding question that I had was, could we look at the, image, just the trim? So the trim has been modified on some of the windows. And it's overlapped by vinyl, right, on the, here's the original notes. So is the trim that you're proposing matches the original window trim?
I think the original,
Here.
we're gonna be, I mean, that's nothing mentioned in the asset, is that what?
No, I know what the material is, but are you achieving the same form? Right, so it has a, it looks like it has a drip edge up here. Here, have a look.
No, I mean, am I correct that essentially the casing around the window is wood as opposed to vinyl?
The
This
current
portion,
casing.
yeah, this portion,
Right.
so that's wood.
Right,
Okay, now is that going to be replaced
yes.
With
with what?
With, what's the?
AZEK?
AZEK.
It's in the drawing, yeah.
Okay. And it'll be replaced to match what's there.
Right.
So the profile is being matched.
Profile's the same.
The barge board on the east elevation, and the window, little eyelet window. I don't know if there's any, I don't see anything in the drawings that suggest that would be preserved. Is that something we made a note of?
The decoration on the rake board?
Yeah.
It was in the original drawing. It
Was
wasn't.
it?
In the drawing.
It's in there? Oh.
And then we,
Okay.
during the last discussion,
Okay.
asked that they not duplicate that on the other two gables.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't think it's drawn, I think it's annotated, if I remember correctly.
I don't see it.
The eyelet window, but this,
Oh.
decorative element here.
I think it actually is called.
Well,
that.
actually, it's annotated, but it's annotated for elsewhere.
Yeah.
The rake board with the ornament is here, which is pointing towards on the south
That's the wrong
elevation.
one.
It doesn't have it on the side,
It's
so.
over
We need to
here.
mark it with drawing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me mark it up.
So it's being retained on the east gable, but not on the other, not on the new construction gable end.
Right, it's not being added to the new gables.
What's the difference between birch board and rake board? Same thing?
Same.
Just wanna make sure I'm not using the wrong term.
What denotes two different floors on a solid flat floor that separates one story from another story. I thought that was right.
No,
I've always
on a
thought
gable.
Barge board and rake board were synonymous,
I mean,
meaning gable
no,
end.
it could be a waterproof.
Birch board, decorative board attached to the projecting portion of gable, also called a birch board.
Okay, and
Sure.
you also
I
want
wanna make sure I'm using the right term.
You also want the note about retaining the window to remain.
The
existing
lancet
window.
window.
The lancet window.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the application as modified?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Sean,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
I vote no.
Aye.
Okay, approved.
Thank you. Al, do you want to state for the public record your reason for?
Yeah, well, the reason was the reason that I gave before. I think that the addition could have been recessed to differentiate it from the existing structure that is there. I think that the windows on the west side are not in keeping with the style elsewhere on the building. And I think that the glass enclosure is not in keeping with the style of the building. Okay, now I'm gonna need 2 more copies of this. I've got plenty of applications. That and also as part of your application.
Is that the old one? That's the old one.
No, I made the motion.
I made the motion.
Okay.
You know, copies of this, 2 more copies of this, and the glazing, the window, and the door. Okay? You can drop them off at the village office. I'll pick them up and I'll process it over the weekend. Okay?
They do a true.
We have a folder.
No, for Al.
Why don't you, this is the file. No,
How many do you
Actually
need
have two
altogether?
copies,
2 more.
You have them already?
2 dozen,
Okay? And, yeah.
Windows, so what else?
No, that's the, one's the door.
You know, the door and the windows. That's it as far as the catalog cuts, just the drawing. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're done. It's us
Way to
anyway.
go.
Do we need that to make the copy? Because it's got your
Yeah, yes, I'll
notations.
probably need to carry that.
Take that with us, make the copies?
Actually, okay.
I can drop it.
We can do
Because it
that.
has your.
Yeah, it has the-
notes on
has
it.
You know what, why don't I make you a copy on the machine here to take with you, and then you
Okay,
can keep.
perfect.
Well, why don't you just make 2 copies and then we'll be done?
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna mark it on.
Okay.
Seal.
Carolyn's leaving?
Yes.
They need more space, I can move that.
Actually, I need this to be higher, I feel like.
Okay.
Table's on my
Just
chin,
don't see.
but that's okay.
We are 15 minutes close. From first cumulative over the course of the year
This is also part of,
I think those are XO.
I wind up throwing away a lot of paper every time we
Going through all those boxes was like so
So what? So like,
satisfying.
oh yeah,
To, like throw
purge.
out all of
It's
the
great.
unnecessary copies.
Blueprints.
Okay.
Actually, it's good because it does inform when we do our design standards updates, what's happened already in the village. Very important.
While we're waiting for the vice chair to return.
I am here. I figured out how to reduce on the copier.
Oh, that's
wow.
Copiers. Too complicated for me. Okay. So now we need to make a motion. I make a motion at 8:31 to move into workshop.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we are in workshop.
And first on for the workshop is Fair Street, who is not here.
Not here.
Okay.
Did you
I did. I sent him an email yesterday.
tell him to come right before you back?
I did, but we can take others and if he comes later.
Okay.
Okay, so next is 126 Main. And the computer is locked again. It's all you, Andrea. Computer's frozen again.
Okay. I can deal with it. Hello again, everybody.
Hi, guys.
Like happy families. Each other all the time. So first of all, I just wanted to submit, as part of our application, I have a letter from the owner who couldn't be here tonight, so she just wanted to communicate via a letter. She's on vacation, and also an engineer's report that might compile based on a lot of the information we looked at the site over the weekend. So there are 6 copies.
Oh, I see. Okay. So here are, here's an original set. I'm going to take a copy from you and pass it around. This back and the other folder.
Okay, so now, is this an actual application? Because the last time, no, we're in workshop. We're still in workshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully by
Okay.
the next meeting, it can become official, but I'm kind of, we'll follow kind of your input on that in terms of how it should coincide with an application for a new building. But first of all, I wanted to thank you all for coming out to the site over the weekend. And basically, we just wanted to, you know, kind of review those items again or answer any questions you might have as a result of the site visit. The report from Mike, who you all met, basically kind of summarizes the different issues with the building that we hopefully brought to your attention and you were able to see firsthand. But if you have any more questions about about the structure and our concerns about that, we can also answer those. And in terms of the history of the building, basically I was able just to gather a couple of more maps of the area that we can look at together, and I have no real, firm information about the building itself and its evolution, except for what's shown on the maps. So, and I visited the Putnam History Museum. They have no specific files on that building. They did allow us to, things may appear, they're in the process of digitizing things throughout the museum, and they're discovering documents that they never had, knew they had, but,
We've
that's
asked for
something.
streetscapes, because that's where a lot of this material ends up turning out.
In terms of photographs.
Main
Yeah.
Street,
Yeah, ask for Main Street,
Yeah.
even go on
Street.
eBay and look for I've done this.
Yeah.
Go on eBay and look for, and then one of my friends bought them all. I was like, where'd they go? And he's like, I bought them.
Right.
They're in my house, you can come see. Yes, John Whalen has all the postcards.
I think that's
But yeah, you can look around on eBay. Those are, more obscure resources, but sometimes you find stuff. And
Right.
it, being that it's Main Street, it's pretty well documented.
Ask the Zurich Whalens to look at
Yeah.
to look at their collection.
Knock on your door.
Well, I met Janet Rust, who.
Oh, Janet has tons.
Yep, she's another resident.
And she actually had the postcard, which had the photo on it.
Oh,
that-
that photograph was made from?
Yeah.
Oh,
She had
fantastic.
that
Great.
postcard, so that photo was from her personal.
Yeah,
memorabilia.
her dad's collection, actually.
Yeah, and then they gave me the one other streetscape which showed a smidgen of the building, and they had other streetscapes, but nothing that showed.
At the History
at the
Museum.
History Museum.
Mhm.
So anyhow, we have a few photos. We have some from the 80s that were, one probably from 75, which is on the blue form. And I start to kind of go through those. We can look at the maps. So, the photos, I think you all saw these, but this was the postcard. And just put these down. So the estimated date of the postcard they put at around the turn of the century, and that was based on, the postcard was published by Dalzell, and who theoretically was the owner of this store, which is now the Silver Spoon, maybe the person standing in the photo, and he published postcards around the turn of the century. So there's no definitive date on that, but because it's from a postcard, that's kind of essential. This is from Putnam History Museum. And then this photo, the streetscape, they estimated was taken around the 1890s based on records of a couple of different snowstorms that were recorded in the village, and that was, again, kind of their best estimate on the date of that photo, so.
That's around, that'd be great.
Do you want an opportunity to look at those before, or can I
Is that okay?
just keep?
Oh, well, yeah, go ahead, keep rolling. Oh, up to the chair.
Okay. So these, I think, Kathleen, you referred to these
It's the
as
blue form, see?
form. So this evidently was the original blue form, because it's the same information that's crossed out and revised. So this later version was updated, I believe, when they were doing the survey for the National Historic District. So that would have been done in around 81, 82. This has a date of 1975, but it does show double windows on the lower facade before the bay window was added. So that's kind of an interesting feature. It has the stoop and the covered entry that's currently on the building, so the full-length porch that's shown in that postcard photo is no longer there. But you can see between 75 and roughly 82, the change from the single windows to the bay. And actually, I'm pretty certain Carolyn's Flower Shop
I was
said
just
she is.
gonna say,
involved with
had you, because her dad had the building before she did, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
was
they.
was she able to give you any
they-
information about what her father had?
Not really, except that they had installed the bay window, at the front of the building and the vinyl siding as well. Okay, these photos are actually part of the survey for the National Historic Register of the Cold Spring District. This is actually across the street, but they were on the same page from that document. So this photo, again, these would have been taken around 1982 when the survey was done. So they went through the village and they listed all the properties with a brief description of each one, and then they took photos up and down Main Street, but not every single building is located. So here, it's actually just the rear end of the building. If you recall from the site visit, there's kind of that two-story enclosed entry at the back by the fire escape. That's that portion. Those are the two windows moving in, and then the bay window on the side of the building is actually cut off from the photo. But so again, that's probably from 81, 82.
Okay, I guess I have a question on this one. So the building in question is this one here?
No, it's actually almost cut off from the photo. At the very edge, you can kind of see like
Okay,
what looks
okay,
like
so
a
this is the
white-
pizza parlor.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
actually, I don't think you even have it, I think that's the Silver Spoons probably. That's the pizza
It looked
parlor.
like
This is the street.
railing might have been a part of,
I think this is looking down Main Street.
Yeah.
Right, so
It would be here. Okay.
this one, oh, to finally actually see this image.
It
We've seen
wasn't
copies of this image for so long.
so in the photo below it where it's just cut
Here.
off, I think that's
This is
the
Silver
end
Spoon.
of the porch.
Yeah.
Potentially.
And this does now that you see the original, this does look like a sign hanging off that
Brick building.
either off the brick building or off
Off
this.
the
Maybe, I don't know, it's hard to
porch.
say. But it looks to me like it's hanging off the porch, regardless. Okay.
So that's it in terms of the historic photos, and then, of course, we all know this now.
Yes.
Oh, this is Caffrey's house here. Oops, sorry. Seen this one? Really can't predict these issues. Yeah.
So maps, because maps seem to be telling a little bit more of the story of the evolution of the building. I was actually over at, Carmel, the county clerk's office today, looking through deeds and things and kind of following the ownership of the property back, and also came upon some maps there as well. So this was actually the earliest one I found that was dated, which was filed August 1853, and does actually show a building on the property, and he calls it as a bakery or back then. So the Sanborn maps that we had went back.
Where did
as
this
far-
from? 1887.
That Putnam County.
Okay. 1953, and then our Sanborns pick up in 1887.
So this is a second map that came also from the Putnam County Clerk's Office, which has no building on the property, but it's interesting because most of the properties in Cold Spring don't have buildings on this map. Some do, however. There was no date associated with this map, but we can pass it around for reference.
So this was back when Upper Maine was sort of like wilderness.
Well, actually,
It's
it-
interesting, though, the lots are
are
defined.
subdivided,
subdivision lot,
but there's
maybe.
no, oh no, I take it back, there are a few buildings right here, you're right. I mean, this is all, it looks like it was a new development.
Well, it's like maybe it's a plat.
Yeah, I mean, well, no, because you got the.
There's nothing.
So that was
orchards.
burned down or
Yeah,
something.
interesting.
That's interesting.
And the
Also maybe an
Presbyterian parsonage but no church. So essentially you had Kimball Avenue, upper part of Main Street around Furnace Street.
Right, housing for the foundry was there.
Yeah. And 9D wasn't even cut.
Sleepy little village.
That's our hotels.
You had a good day, Karen. You're hunting.
Yeah, pretty good.
Sorry, this is interesting.
These are
Sean
interesting,
pointed out
though.
that there's a saloon where the parking lot is now. Things must have gotten out of hand at the saloon and it burned down.
No.
So this is where the property is right
Yeah.
there. And actually, Back Brook was available there.
See, in Morris Avenue and Chestnut Street were actually already cut through.
And this was 1853.
That's
Yep.
when it was fired,
Yeah.
so. And the maps were adjacent in the book, not that that means anything in terms of timing, but.
Huh. Locust Ridge was called Chestnut. All right.
So, thank you.
Okay, and then we have a couple more, these came from the Putnam History Museum. One's from 1854, they refer to it as the O'Connor map, and one from 1867, the Beers map. So, Beers shows buildings on the property that aren't connected to the adjacent property, but I don't know if that's just a product of this style of map or not, but they do show other buildings that are adjoining, so that's possible that the connections came after 1867. And the 1854 map, a lot of the streets aren't even included, so it's hard to tell. There are indications of buildings, but it's honestly hard to confirm what building may or may not relate to the property. And then I think we've all seen the Sanborn maps, but this is kind of the
Yeah, that's
progression
helpful.
of the maps, so.
Refresh Saloon.
It says bread in 1887, so
It's bakery.
bakery,
right?
bakery, bakery.
And we know all the bread, daily bread
It
cake.
was-
And also, did you notice the path of the brook?
That's what's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that used to go down Garden. I'm not sure when it
Well, it got down Garden. This is here's Garden here.
was. No, I
Here's
know
coming down the
it
center
was
of the block.
relocated, actually. It did
It's
go down.
relocated up here. Was it relocated down here as well?
Yeah. Yeah, this, all this.
No, it must have been a pretty successful.
Oh, I see here how
It's
it
around for a
runs.
while.
Last
Yeah.
many years, I was
I was
gonna
gonna say, it was the
say.
news that it started out as
Fire.
just bread, and then they
Right.
must have like introduced
Right.
other baked
Right.
goods to become a
Right,
bakery.
baking,
Let's get the
hot
water.
cross buns or
Yeah.
something.
It's really funny.
I
What would
know,
a
when you think of the
WE
turnover of
church
businesses
refer to?
nowadays.
It's a
It's probably
necessity.
M.E. Methodist.
Everyone needs
Episcopal.
bread.
Although it's funny, because I would have thought people would be making.
Hi,
bread
I didn't
from
see you come in.
Maybe
We
that's
were-
a sign
Yeah,
Our well
little
design
prosperity.
So we
Yeah,
Oh.
we wish things moved faster earlier, so we've shifted around a bit. Welcome back. Lots
Come
of
on,
examples.
Sean, quit hogging the
That's a good one. I like,
exhibits.
that's my favorite.
This one? This one I think is the one that everyone has coffee with.
Which one is that?
This, the
Oh.
beer
So,
tent.
so can we negotiate in whatever space comes to have a refresh saloon?
Yeah.
Because really, I mean, that, somebody has to use that name. Isn't that great?
Refresh.
The refresh saloon.
That's a pretty great name, you're right.
Isn't it fantastic?
Yeah. I'm surprised nobody's picked up on it
Well, right across the street from the yarn shop.
Exactly, right.
You could do the Barber Brew did. Beer
Right,
and
there's
yarn.
barber and brew, there can be knit and sip or something, I don't know.
I was actually going down the line of Stitch and,
Oh, I like that too.
because it's Cold Spring.
Obscene. Does anyone else want this?
So in terms of ownership of the property, and to be honest, I'm still kind of deciphering some of the deeds because the farther back they go, they're harder to read and interpret, and it kind of relates to other properties and parcels that may or may not be
Mhm.
pieced together. But some of the names, of course, we know the current owner is SCGY Properties, which is Sue Costigan.
Good yarn, Sue Costigan, good yarn.
Yes, yeah. And then previously was Carolyn Moranti, collectively with her parents, Carol Warren and Virginia Warren. Prior to that was Thomas Collins,
Mhm.
by himself,
That's
and then
cultural.
with his wife Thomas and Marion Collins. And they owned the property back as far as 58. Actually, in 51, it was transferred from James Whitehill and May Whitehill to the Collins. And then before that is where it gets a little tricky because of the quality of the deeds. They're handwritten at that point. But some of the names it was transferred to were James Flanagan and Thomas Wallace from Mary Gouverneur. And from James Flanagan and Thomas Wallace to them rather from William Gardner and Charles Ferris as executives of the will of Peter McGurk.
Peter, huh?
McGurk.
McGurk. So that is kind of as far back as I was able to kind of follow the deeds out in terms of ownership. So that kind of summarizes what we have found out in terms of ownership, the maps of the building, the photographs of what it looked like, and then, based on our site visit, we all kind of had some ideas on how the building might have evolved in terms of the section that had the full foundation under it, and then the different portions that had crawl spaces, based on also the roof layout and just the condition of how things were laid out. So, again, to reiterate, our concerns about the existing building are primarily in wanting to renovate it and accommodate the features and insulation and space and light, as well as meet or bring the building up to as many of the current building code requirements as is feasible in terms of fire separation and safety and accessibility. We find that is presents more and more challenges with the condition of the existing building and wanting to both improve things, add structure on top of a foundation that's really deteriorating condition and undersized. And also we have the very serious problem with the proximity of the building to the.
So that really is something that I don't see how we can get around. To repair that building or maintain that building, or frankly, 124 Main Street's in the same situation with that 6-inch proximity. It's a situation I've never encountered, and I don't know how you repair or maintain. And obviously for the last 80, 100 years it hasn't been. The walls are crumbling.
We're workshopping, so throwing out ideas. This is not anything I'm recommending as a course of action. I'm asking a question. We recently dealt with another Main Street building that had a very deteriorated foundation. Different scope and scale, I'm thinking of 178. And in that case, the building was raised and foundation rebuilt. It was a square building that had a very simple addition on the back, obviously different size. Not as complex in terms of additions. But I'm looking at you as an engineer and saying, when you consider the state of that foundation, do you see any possibility for, I'm thinking of the main mass, the original mass of the building, right? I think we're all pretty clear on the fact that this building has accretions, and one of the accretions was a really poor choice, right? That extended the building west and so close to the structure next door. Or at least that's what we believe. So looking at that early mass, is there any of that foundation that you believe it would be salvageable with
when you
remediation?
say salvageable, you took that center core
Or
section.
able to be rebuilt?
Yes. Frankly, it would be difficult, time-consuming, but sure. The building you're referring to, is that the River Architects building?
The 178 is, yes. I mean, it's totally different.
Yeah,
It's
no,
a
I
totally
know,
different deal. That was
I'm very
stone.
well
This
aware
is
of that
brick. This is
building.
brick that's been pierced. It's
What is the thickness of the foundation along the main part?
8 inches.
Is 8 inches sufficient to hold up a two-story building?
8-inch brick? In my opinion, it's insufficient. In my opinion, it's insufficient. Brick foundations are generally 3 wides.
well, I mean, which could be part of the problem. Part of the problem.
Yeah. Right. And does anybody have any other questions or anything else? Because I think, well, let me put it this way. Does anybody have any other questions that we would like the applicant to answer concerning the building?
Not right now, but that doesn't mean that's the end of.
No, I'm because we gotta take the next step forward.
Could we see the structure in plan? Is there something in here that has it in plan? Yeah.
I just want to make sure that when I'm taking notes on what you're saying, that I'm representing what you said accurately.
So what if,
Andrew, just if you don't mind, just 1 second. When you said I asked you if the original foundation, the foundation of the original mass could somehow be shored and sections of it retained. Could you say again what your response was?
I said it could be replaced. I don't believe I could foresee keeping any of that foundation. I think if you wanted to strip the building of additions, take that center core, jack it up and rebuild the foundation underneath it, sure, that's doable. I'm not saying it's feasible, but it's certainly.
You can do anything with enough money.
Money and time.
well, that was where my question was going. So this is the original mass. These are obviously the additions.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what seems to be what a visual supports.
Yeah.
Do we think this is original?
No.
No. Yeah, fact, on the Sanborn maps between 87 and 97, I think.
Mhm, that's what it
shows
shows.
that.
It also that's the area downstairs that looks as if there was something, an entry or something
Yeah.
there.
I mean, I'm just thinking, if this area of the foundation, you could remove this old addition, maintain the original footprint, add on to
Early footprint.
early footprint, tear this off, rebuild that, build whatever you end up proposing.
It's possible, however, we do want to renovate the building as well and to accommodate the space, the retail space that the owner would like to see as an improvement and open up light and have an actual storefront facing Main Street. And also raise the ceilings if possible, but that's also driven somewhat by building codes and, how much, to what extent we're allowed to utilize the existing structure and not meet building codes and fire separation, and to what extent we would be required to do that.
Well, I don't think that we're talking about, we have no purview over the interior, so I don't think that what's being suggested is, please keep that frighteningly low ceiling on the very first floor and the strange little hobbit spaces upstairs. But can we retain the original mass? And can that original mass be incorporated in a new development? I mean, my primary concern is that original mass. I personally I'm very interested in the idea of the fact that its gable runs differently than the other structures on Main Street, that it had a different character because of the way the roof line ran. I'm interested in the idea of seeing that original roof line. So behind the interested member of the public who's here, behind that parapet is a gable that runs perpendicular to the street rather than parallel.
North-south.
Right. And we talked about the fact that the building may have had an orientation uphill. Or it may have had an entrance on Main. I don't know. It was open in that area. We know the stream, at some point the stream was shifted to run through there. I would be open to looking at options for sort of trying to recapture that early configuration. But I do have concerns about trying to preserve as much of the fabric and form of that original mass as we can.
And, that's certainly our intent moving forward if we're allowed to construct a new building on the property, is to keep something of the scale and the style and, work with your board to define what the exterior will be so that it's appropriate for the village. In terms of like removing the sections around it and working with what's there, some of the big issues are, trying to build a new or improve the existing structure on top of what is a substandard foundation, and obviously we need to shore up that foundation. So how much of that foundation is actually being preserved? So if we're taking the building out or lifting it up or reconfiguring it to such an extent that very little of it is left, or we have to reconstruct the entire foundation, then ultimately our goal would be to start with a new foundation and walls that can support framing and fire separation of a new structure, and we can address insulation and energy code issues as well. So in terms of approaching what might have been there originally, that is our hope, to actually have a building that's set approximately 5 feet off of the neighbor's building, so that there's breathing room between them in terms of maintenance, airflow, ventilation, light, but also, keep something that's in scale and character of the village. And also, we want to note that the proposed use is the same as what's there now. first floor and a dwelling unit on the second floor.
Well, obviously, seeker comes into play here. It's a proposed demolition and nationally listed part of the district, so this will be a long form and a coordinated review with planning board, and potentially zoning board.
We will be going
Yeah,
to zoning board.
so that calls for lead agency, et cetera. A key concept here is that we have to look at both pieces. So if we were to just look at demolition, we would be segmenting the project, right? So we need to look at two pieces. So I guess the question I have is, how, in this case, how, to what level of detail does the applicant need to bring forward a redevelopment plan that is reviewed in tandem with the demolition proposal?
You asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
As far as I'm concerned, they're two separate issues, and so as long as, maybe we have a footprint or something like that, that would be fine with me.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know how other board members feel about it.
You're saying that you would be able to approve the demolition of this building without seeing what the proposal is to replace it?
Yeah, because how are the two tied together?
How, well, I think that they're very intimately tied together.
Okay, how?
Because you would be approving the demolition of a building in the historic district and potentially have it be replaced with nothing at all, and then we would have an empty lot
Well,
Next to an empty lot.
but,
next to an already empty lot.
okay, but what I said was that as long as I have a footprint of what is going to be there, because, even if we had fully detailed plans, is that any guarantee that it actually is going to get built?
Well, right now we have nothing.
That's the certificate of appropriateness that we sign for the property, then, yeah, then it is what will be built.
What guarantee do you have that if I issue a certificate of appropriateness for fully developed plans, that the owner says, oh man, I just don't have the money?
This is what you're trying to avoid with not segmenting. That's what you're trying to avoid with not segmenting, and that is...
No, because the whole secret tool, for the most part, is a planning tool. And basically, what you're looking at are the environmental impacts of one action, and you want to make sure that if there is a subsequent action, that you're aware of that. What we're dealing with here is essentially the analysis of a historic building, whether or not we demolish it, and then what gets built afterwards. I don't think that the two are comparable.
Well, I agree that are you saying specifically for the purpose of the secret review, we don't need to know what's being built afterwards?
Well, for the secret review, in order to comply with the letter of the law of the secret review, it really, we can't segment this. So the question that Kathleen asked me was, what level of detail do we need to see as far as what is going to go in its place? And I said basically a footprint, maybe a mass.
So in response to that, I would like to say that I would like clarification on that point. We, in my tenure, at any rate, in the one previous demolition that I have been part of, seeker was not conducted for that, under advice of the village attorney at the time. Seeker was not conducted, and seeker was conducted by the planning board, and HDRB was not considered, our action was considered ministerial. the advice of the current village attorney is that this is not a ministerial action, and that we follow, that it is type 1 by virtue of the fact of being in the national district. I am not clear, because we have not done this before, that it is correct to say, if you give me a rectangle on a paper, that is enough to proceed and consider the impact of this demolition. So I would like to understand what it is that makes the bar, where the bar is placed in the seeker review for what you're looking at for replacement.
Okay, let me ask you a question. What is the difference in our review if it's a type 1 or a type 2? How do we review the application?
Our design standards are the same, but the environmental review is that the element that's different. It's long form versus short form, and the full impact.
Are you saying that you're going to ask them to do an environmental impact statement?
If there is a type 1 declaration, yes. And I believe that this is a type 1 action, because it is in the national, by virtue of the fact that it is in the National Historic District. And it is a full removal of the resource.
Okay. I disagree, because if you read the secret regulation, what it says is that a type 1 is anything within 500 feet of a national district. So the way I understand the ordinance to read is that it's really talking about properties that are outside of the district that are...
Since the demo rebuild is taking place within the historic district, it would qualify as a type 1 action under seeker. Type 1 actions require coordinated review and the submission of a long EAF.
Okay.
That's pretty clear.
No, wait a minute. So long EAF as opposed to environmental impact statement, because those are two different things.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I misunderstand the question you were asking before?
Yeah.
You had answered yes to the environmental impact.
No, I'm sorry. I was referring to EAF, I'm sorry.
Okay. And fine, and we get, do you have a copy of the long form, the blank long form?
I don't have it with me.
Okay,
No.
well, I remember, because when we had the discussion, there were 4 questions dealing with historic preservation. Otherwise, everything else has to do with environmental issues.
For
But
when we
that's-
need an application, A. B, then we make a seeker finding.
Yes.
And someone declares lead agency. It's gonna be a
Right.
coordinated review.
Right.
So we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. I was
Yes,
just
we
trying
are.
to, I was trying to think about guidance for what happens next.
Right, and you asked me what I thought was necessary, and I
Yep.
told you.
And you
Now,
think it's a right-
obviously, Sean disagrees,
I disagree as well.
and you disagree.
But I am not clear, having not been part of this type of review prior, what is a reasonable degree of documentation for rebuild that is brought to the table at the beginning of the seeker process? And I think that
Agreed.
that's a question that I would like guidance on.
From whom?
I would like guidance from the village attorney.
Is it
Because I want to
is
make
it-
sure that we're making a request of the applicant that is reasonable at this stage, right? Because what you're looking at is the applicant spending her architect's time on preparation. So I would like to know what is a reasonable, I'm trying to come at this from a place of what's reasonable to ask.
Agreed.
And I don't know what that is.
Okay, and I think that, I'm not sure that the village attorney, what he would know. I would suggest that maybe SHPO would be a better source.
That could be. That could be.
And
I just-
I'll tell you why I
Yeah.
don't think that the village attorney is going to be any help. Because he can advise as far as what the law says. But the
Uh-huh.
law does not talk about what submission requirements are. And so what does he have to go to in order to find out?
Well, I would imagine that by virtue of his experience in other municipalities, he may have experience with other similar applications.
Okay.
So
Well, I would
that's why
say-
I went there first. If you think it's appropriate to ask SHPO that question.
I would suggest
That's
SHPO
okay, too.
because I would think that they would have more experience in it.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Kathleen.
Oh, no.
Ask Shiva.
You understand where I'm going with this, right?
I-
I'm trying to get to a point where we are asking for an amount of information that can be used for decision making, but does not sink your property owner in the hole
I
for documentation
understand.
preparation. That's the impetus for my question.
Right.
Is it a
Especially
two-option
since-
approach where we say option one and option two being keep the core, and this is what?
It may be that if that's the route you choose to go.
Well, I'm asking if that's the, you kind of indicated.
I mean, I would like to see options. To me, it is essential to do everything we can to maintain as much of the original fabric on that original mass as possible, recognizing we have a problematic foundation. We've had problematic Main Street foundations. We very, very recently dealt with one.
We've got problematic framing too.
Yes, well, so do they. So, you know, I personally am not ready to say, you're right, we walked in that foundation, I can see the problems, take the building down. I would like to talk about, and I think that our ordinance requires us to talk about options that in the first instance preserve fabric and move out from there.
Well, the one thing that is not comparable to 178 Main Street is that.
I'm not saying it's an exact comparable.
Right, because there the foundation was deemed to be acceptable. That the only difference was that the building was going to be expanded. And it wasn't until they actually started working on it that it became obvious that the foundation was crumbling.
That's a good point. I'd like to hear from others.
Yeah, others, come on,
I,
jump in.
we don't have, I mean, when I began asking about the original, you know, to see the structure and plan, where I was going with that is that what Kathleen mentioned, I want to see the options. I mean, it's hard to talk about a demolition when that's not our job. Our job is to preserve as much of our Main Street history as we can. And I feel like we just don't have a lot of information to work with here. You know, normally we see the plans, we see the drawings, we have a lot of ideas. We're just focusing on demo or no demo, and I think we need a lot more information. How much really needs to be, what are the options for the foundation? You know, what are you eventually planning? What is it going to look like? Because that informs what happens here, you know? If we can find ways to, you know, bring your design ideas to this structure, this historic structure on Main Street. I mean, this is going to be around forever now. So you know, I mean, well, and also, you know, it's hard to discuss. I feel like there's a lot of discussion of replica, and replica's not what we want. We want to preserve what's already here. Replica doesn't help us preserve our history. It's an imitation. And we have something really unique here. A lot of Main Streets have been destroyed.
I think too, because this is a building that it's already received so many modifications,
Mhm.
I personally
Yeah.
am open and flexible from a
Mhm.
design perspective to consider options that meet your client's needs.
I mean, like this window here, this bay window. I mean, that's so obviously added on much later.
It's not much
She
later.
has-
It's on the 1897 Sanborn.
The front
But the
bay
open-
outside.
this-
Oh, the front. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
front.
She means she
Yeah.
you know
I'm
she
like,
put it on
really?
82 or something, right?
That thing? I mean, but you know, just being able to, you know, there's nothing to preserve there. You have a big, huge opening for a storefront. You have options there. You have options here. I mean,
I think the other real big issue too, and we discussed this on the site, and we discussed this during our first meeting. A major contributor to the problems that you're having with this building is this
Yeah,
exactly,
is this
yeah.
side section that was added onto it. It doesn't. It has a redeeming value insofar as it is part of the evolution of the building itself, and it obviously connects it to the facade of the building next to it. But from my standpoint, it's doing more harm than good.
Mhm.
So that removing that and dealing with that situation, obviously you're going to be losing your staircase. That's going to have to go somewhere else. But to me, that's like a big step in the direction of fixing the problems of the building. A lot of the other issues that are, that are being presented in the engineering report, I mean, truthfully, they're really apparent issues, and I'm not convinced that somebody, through the course of buying this building in the first place, would have not noticed these things. So to tear down the building because of the issues presented here is, in a vacuum, is insufficient for me to think that's the only solution. There's low ceilings in the space, in the retail space, but I think that's kind of a known, and like the wonky floor and some other things. There's obviously safety issues that need to be addressed, and that's why I think that the foundation, losing whatever historic fabric exists in a foundation that is not visible from the public right of way, I'm not that concerned about. The River Architects site, that
It's true, that was a
became
more
a very
exposed,
a very public-facing foundation, so it was sort of a little bit of a different story, particularly because they raised it up and made it part of the facade of the building.
You made it a whole
Well,
other
but
story.
also this has vinyl running right to the ground. So
Yeah.
we don't know until it's removed what the original exposed foundation may have been. So there,
Well, you can see from the inside that there really was.
Well, no, but I mean, we don't know how much was exposed. Brick to brick, you're right. Rebuilding a foundation that isn't exposed to the public, I'd have less of a problem with that.
Mhm.
So long as we're I do want to be able to capture what of that was exposed and how did that read? How did that read from the street? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I guess I'm looking at it and thinking that we do have this known historic core of the building. There is precedent for, here and all over the world, there's precedent for raising buildings and rebuilding foundations below them. You're going to be losing, the space to the back addition, and obviously if you maintain this original line, edge of the building, then you're going to be losing a lot of space where you currently have the staircase and the powder room, which you're going to make up for somewhere else. But as far as the retail space itself is concerned, you're essentially going to be maintaining most of that space. And I'm not opposed to discussing further additions off the back or anything like that. But I don't see this, even walking through the building and as precarious as it was, I didn't see it as being a waste. It's a really generously sized apartment upstairs. It's the floors are unlevel and it's silly, and that bathroom is a war crime, but it's still it's a very usable building. And I think, to Kathleen's earlier point, what happens inside the retail space is, it is outside of our purview, but it is still something that affects people passing the building on the street, especially if you're going to be adding windows to the facade and everything else. And again, to the 178 Main project, a really great thing about that building, which we had no immediate role in, but I think it's a great, now that I've seen it all done, is that when you walk by, you look in, and they've maintained all of this great historic framing inside that you can see. So even if the exterior of it has changed in a lot of different ways,
Interesting point.
it still has this historic element to it, which obviously they exposed because before it was a drop ceiling and everything else. So I know that I'm harping on one very small issue of a bigger report, but the property owner knew that the ceilings in the retail space were low when they bought the building. I mean, if you walked in that building, you would know that those ceilings were low. So, I'm really not convinced that that this building has to be torn down at this stage.
So there are a number of issues in terms of like low ceilings. It's not just like from a comfort level. When we start to renovate buildings to a certain degree, and when you exceed a certain percentage, you have to meet more levels of the building code. And when you have different occupancies in a building, which we're proposing to have, even though we're not changing the use in terms of what's there, we have a mixed use, and you have to provide fire separation between the uses. You also have required ceiling heights for different uses within a building, and there's also the issue of fire separation between the adjacent building, which kind of further emphasizes our need
Be
to
non-existent
separate.
fire separation.
Yeah, and of course, buildings exist for many years in conditions that they are, but again, as you plan to upgrade to a certain extent, the more you have to address building code needs. And there are provisions for historic buildings, but, you know, that is weighed in terms of criteria also in regards to what is actually there. And if the Department of State Codes Division comes to the building and they kind of assess, you know, if there's a detrimental loss to historic features, they would be more inclined to give you variances, but in a building that's already been modified. And also, just to follow that through further, and it's a desire of ours, but to create a building that's accessible. You know, if we're planning to go to a certain degree of renovations, not only do we want to have it accessible to the street, obviously, but to have an accessible restroom facility, and those are requirements of the code, but it's also something that we want to do. So in terms of, you know, yes, can a building be lifted and a new foundation put under it? Of course, and you have no purview as far as what goes on inside the building, but the question is, you know, once we start renovating to that degree and we're taking out features that clearly were added, we can't add a porch back on because we don't own the property on the sidewalk. In fact, the front of the building sits
A lot of
6
people have
inches
that.
over the property line. And
But
so
the village has recently started selling stoops.
they have,
So-
however, this owner just bought a property that actually can accommodate parking, can accommodate a building, and so to
It's not an
ask
impossibility.
them to start buying more property so they can recreate what was there in that postcard, you know, that's clearly what we want to do moving forward, is develop the property so that it does fit with the fabric of the village, and believe that that can be done in the course of a new building. Not that we want to create a replica, as you.
Well, it essentially would be a replica.
But we're not replicating. Our goal is not to recreate the building that was there in that postcard, but to create a new building that is going to work and be a part of the fabric of the village in terms of both its use and its style and its scale. And I
So
think
Karen,
that-
here's something we need to think about, right? There's that side, that's the ownership side. There's our very serious challenge of precedent. This is a building
Absolutely.
on Main Street in the nationally listed area. The building has not been deemed to be a health and safety risk. It's not been condemned
No.
by the building inspector, no. So saying, you know what, you're right, the building has been modified, and you have another idea, so, all right, we'll demolish it. So what stops the next person from saying, my building's in rough shape, it's had modifications, I want to do something different, I'm going to take my building down. I take that responsibility super seriously. And I know that you take what you're doing very seriously, but we have to find a way to balance the goals of a district, a community that has ownership in that district, and the private property ownership. So, and we have an ordinance to meet. So it's not, you knew coming in, we talked about it early on, and I know that the property owner knew this too, that it's not an easy bar to reach. And so we've got to look at options. So we keep saying, well, clearly we want. Okay, so now show us what the clearly is. I'm concerned that we understand how far you go at what stage with having to demonstrate, because I want to make sure that that process is fair to you and the property owner. But I have a big concern about precedent.
I also think it would be precedent for sure. It's also, we've had a history of, there are a lot of Main Street buildings that have been in rough shape, that are in rough shape. I'm thinking about fairness to the people who have taken on these big projects and, respecting their efforts and protecting our Main Street and our history here.
Well, all right. Since everybody's venting, I think.
It's a hard discussion.
It is a
is.
tough
Well,
decision.
I think that.
And we completely
I think that
This is the
if you're talking
worst
about
part
a
of this.
precedent, I think 178 Main Street is a precedent because realistically, that was recreated. There's nothing
Yeah.
on the exterior that is original. The foundation was rebuilt. Maybe they used the same stone, maybe not. But I mean, essentially, that was already one precedent that was set.
The frame
Framing,
remains.
the framing
The
is
frame
original.
remains.
I know,
That
but
was
the
not.
frame, okay, but you have to go inside to see the framing, right?
Well,
Oh, it's visible from the
It's
public
visible
right
from
away.
the public right away.
The proportions
Okay.
are
Well,
unique.
to me, that sort of, I won't go there. But to me, that is a recreation. And I guess the part that concerns me is that, we talk about on one hand, it's a living village, it has to change in order to adapt. I'm concerned about the foundations because, I think the foundations are gonna have to be rebuilt. So I think that the code, the village ordinance has criteria on what justifies as far as the things that make property historic. And I think that those are the criteria that we should look at to see if this particular building, satisfies any of those criteria. I mean, we shouldn't be treating this differently because it's in the national district. Isn't that what SHPO tells us? That it's all one district.
Treating it differently than what?
Then you said it's in the National Register district, right?
It is in the nationally listed area of the district.
Okay, but that shouldn't make a difference to us.
What do you think we're treating it differently then?
Well, I don't know, you're saying especially because this is in the
No,
national.
well, that only affects our obligations to the secret
Material.
process.
Right.
To what?
To the secret process. That-
Well,
Okay.
That's a requirement.
And let's not go down that road again because.
I
we're
think
just gonna-
that if this were a building being proposed for demolition on Orchard Street, I would say the same thing. I'm concerned about precedent, right? I'm not saying that I am not open. I am very, having seen this building, having been in this building, I am super open to possibilities for the site. I'm saying I would like to see some effort to retain some portion. I was not part of the vote on 178 Main, because I have done work with that architecture firm, so I recuse myself. I would like to discuss it, but I was not a voting member. To me, there were essential things that remain, and I think provide good lessons for this site: mass, scale, roof line, material. That building still reads as a workaday build. You can recognize that for having been a workaday building in its period. Those are the kinds of
It's not.
things that would be important to me. I let you tell me. The things that would be important to me on this site are roof line. It'd be great to have that porch back again. I understand the issue of the ownership on the wacky Main Street lines, but things like roof line, that early bay, the mass, the scale. Obviously, you're going to have to deal with height issues, but if there were an essence that maintain that form, that original form. I'm talking really big picture stuff. And a lot of it comes down to material palette, right? And you're gonna know that when you start taking off that super exciting vinyl. You're gonna get a better sense of what the material palette was.
Okay, well, and let's move on, because I think we have other people who are waiting.
So, but what is the next step for Karen?
Well, that's what let's talk about what what the next thing that we have to do. I think that, again, my feeling is that the criteria that we should look at are the criteria that are listed in the village ordinance.
Well, so we have to look at it
Yeah,
first.
so I think that's, certainly, I think those are the points that you need to address in order to to tell us why you feel that we can demolish this building without really impacting the district. I think that unless there are other specific things that we want the applicant to research, are we ready for to go to a public hearing? We can't vote on it. We have to go to the next, just to an application.
To an application, to a public hearing, no.
Okay, well, I'm talking.
I mean, my view.
All right, but we're talking about the next step for them to take. Is it not an application?
Yes.
Okay, so, and then, is there anything else that we feel that they should generate?
Plans.
In terms of research?
Yes.
Oh.
No, I don't think, I mean, I don't think that there's anything else that I'm interested in seeing as far as research is concerned. But I guess to your earlier point about what this application is going to entail, are we going to be expecting to see an application for the demolition of this building and for what it is going to be replaced with?
Evidently, yes, since we're talking about a type 1 secret application.
We have not taken a vote.
Okay, we have not taken a
Well,
vote.
But we
can't
do
take a
not
vote
have an
until we know what the
application.
application is.
That's right.
That's why I asked
All right, but
earlier
let's
on.
just finish, and I gave you what and obviously that
asking
wasn't
for
the
it
right
from you.
answer. So, there is nothing more that we need the applicant to do before we get to an application. Am I correct? Because we're workshopping, the issue that we have been workshopping up to this point is demolition. But as a part of this application, if we go to type 1 seeker, which is to be voted on, then what we'll do is we'll also need some idea of what is going to be proposed. Am I correct?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but
That would help us.
I would say like a pretty accurate idea of what's proposed. I'm very hesitant to allow this project to really move too far forward without knowing and getting close to approving a demolition without knowing what it's going to be replaced with.
Okay, well, I guess my
Well, and it
question
also
to you
informs
is that,
what-
don't we also have zoning issues that they need to address?
And it needs to go to the
I don't
planning
know.
board. It needs to be a coordinated review.
Right.
So, and just to follow through, our intent is to kind of simultaneously file an application for our proposed plans for the site. And the reason I've held off on that is in terms of a complete application for new or alterations, there are very specific requirements in terms of materials, details, and we are not at that level. So in terms of the timing of an application process, we're waiting until we were further along. But if it's reasonable to present, plans that where I don't necessarily have trim samples or finish samples at this point, but we can start to visualize our proposal for the site alongside this application, we're happy to do that and get that underway. And
I don't know why you wouldn't do that under a continuing workshop rather than put it in as an application. I mean, I think that it would be more efficient and effective and flexible for you to come to workshop a redesign rather than putting the application in.
well,
I mean, that's your
that's
call.
a question in terms of your guidelines and how you have to act on things. That was a question when I
Yeah.
put in the application for this and timing. And can it stay in workshop indefinitely until you're ready to cross over into an application? That's the question, or at some point, you know,
Yeah,
are
I
we-
think I don't want to unfairly hinder them just because we're curious as to what is going to be there.
I really feel like.
Well, let me finish. I mean, I think that the applicant has a bunch of options that they need to deal with, because it has to go to the planning board. The planning board then will identify certain things. It has to go to the building inspector, and he'll tell them whether or not they need variances. I'm not sure about the zoning in this particular part of Main Street. These are all factors that will affect what theoretically they could do. Also, whether or not they can knock down the building is going to affect what they can do. So these are all issues that I agree needs to be handled in a coordinated manner. But the only way that that process can really start is until there is an application and, you know, we start the secret process. Well, I take it back, because you can go to the planning board and that'll start the secret process. So maybe that's
Do
what
we
we
have the option of
recommend
being
that
lead
you do.
agency, or?
We do
is
have
it-
the option of being lead agency. My thought on this is that because the planning board is more experienced with seeker at this level of detail, that it makes sense for the planning board to be the lead agency and us to be an interested agency, or involved, is it interested or involved? Involved agency. Just because I think we don't have, this board, because we don't deal with seeker as frequently, we don't have the fluency. I think we're very capable of responding to our criteria, but I think that board has the fluency, and it will be an easier process for you if the planning board is the lead agency.
Yeah, and they know how to fill out all the paperwork.
Well, I worry about spinning wheels here and using your time inefficiently with us as lead agency.
I think that as our direction to you, well, not direction to you, our recommendation to you is that if you file an application with the, well, they must have filed an application in order to get referred here, right?
Yeah, we
Permit.
filed for, we have our referral to the planning board, as
Okay.
well as to your board for both new construction and demolition, and the zoning board, we know we'll have to go to for variance.
But the
as well.
referral does not indicate ZBA
Not
at this
yet,
point.
no. So, you know, again, we can start the site plan approval. I guess the question is, what site plan are we presenting to them? That's kind of the question in terms of.
Well,
the sequencing.
ultimately, you're dealing with two options. One is with the building demolished, and one is without. So I think that's how you start.
Or
And in the
partially
meantime,
demolished.
you know, we'll go out in the back alley and duke it out and see how we want to deal with this.
Well, don't do that.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
you've got more than two options. You've got complete demolition, you've got demolition of portion, and you've got, wait, it seemed like there was somewhere in there were three. There were complete demolition,
Addition?
partial
Keep what's
demolition,
there.
and attempt to work with the fabric you have. Yeah, that's the third.
Well,
I mean,
even that's gonna result in partial.
yes, of course. So never mind, you have two.
Okay, so, is it safe to say then for the next meeting, we're moving into an application before your board, and we'll also be starting the process with the other boards, but in terms of this current request for demolition, are we moving to the next step with your board? And
Well,
moving into an application workshop?
You know, that's an interesting point, because even if, let's say, took in the problem is that the code requires that once an application is taken, that we have to
But
act
no
on it.
final action can be taken
No
until secret's
final,
complete.
right, and so, you know, basically, we can sit there and vote on something, but ultimately, it doesn't, nothing happens until the secret process is complete.
And if the time frame elapses, are you required to file a new application?
Say that again?
If that time period passes, if you're required to act on something in but planning
50.
board hasn't acted on the secra.
Do you start with a new
Do we have to start a
application?
new application?
No.
No, as a matter of fact,
So why is there a time?
The
Well-
time limit is actually much longer than that because we have.
no, it's only 15 days.
We're still
15
under
days
the-
after
under
the public
existing
hearing,
ordinance.
typically, I mean, for this, we'd take the application, we would vote to have a public hearing, and then 15 days after the public hearing, we have to act.
That's in absence of a secret review. Secret
Right.
review changes that timeline because you can't take a final action until the secret review is complete. So Al, I'm sort of coming back to your idea of,
Footprint in a
maybe
massive.
some sort of massing plan, you know, something blocky and basic that captures as a start. I don't mean as an end, as a start to a conversation, because you've got to show, because under seeker you can't segment, you've got to show something. Let's pause, and my suggestion, pause, knowing that you're going forward with an application in the next step. Get the information that we need to tell Karen for what level of specificity to reach in an initial application, and then have you submit. Does that seem reasonable?
Well, I'd like to submit right away. If you come back and you say you need more information, but we're ready to start.
So that it gets you
Start
in.
the conversation about what we're proposing. And we've been ready to do that, but the question was at what level, because
Yeah.
we don't have every detail pinned down, but we're ready to present, footprints and massing and scale and use for the building. So.
And see, the thing is that realistically, until you have all of that worked out, we probably wouldn't be voting on the proposed construction.
Correct.
The only thing that we would be voting on would be the demolition.
Right, and that.
With
will-
the acknowledgement that the post-construction would follow on.
So then we would have to hold a public hearing for the demolition and then hold another public hearing for the new construction?
Yep.
And that will actually allow us to proceed with the other boards, because we
I-
really can't
I would
proceed.
like clarification
with-
on this point. This is the point on which I want clarification, please. I'm not sure, I am not sure that breaking it apart like that doesn't constitute a segmentation. I would like guidance, please.
Okay, but I would just add, clearly for us to go to the extent of a full application for potentially a new building while you're still simultaneously thinking about demolition, if the demolition is denied, then,
Yeah.
we're kind of starting over all our applications. Like, we can really only go so far with planning
And I
and
think we're gonna
zoning.
keep spinning in circles on this tonight, and I'm not gonna be satisfied, and you're not gonna be. So I would like guidance on this question.
We don't get a lot of applications for demolitions, especially on Main Street, so this is going to be complicated. I mean, I have to be honest,
No, we understand that.
we can't move too quickly on this. There's a lot at stake.
Okay.
So I think we
Can
should
you
ask the
contact-
lawyer.
And we also haven't heard from Linda about our annual review. Did we pass? Can you ask her?
Yes, she said we were fine.
Okay.
I mean, she's gonna be writing up a report, but she's very happy with, this is a separate conversation, we can have this later.
Okay, but can you call SHPO, because I think the part that concerns me about talking to the lawyer is that he may or may not.
I would like to find
But-
out, given the fact that the village attorney will be advising the coordinated review, I think it's totally appropriate to
Okay.
ask his advice.
Talk to both.
Yes, I'm happy to talk to both.
Because I think that SHPO has more experience in the process than I suspect John First does. But that is neither here nor there, since we're going to ask both of them, and we'll all live happily ever after. Okay?
And I'd just like to add, we do respect that this is not an easy decision, and it's gonna take time, and appreciate the due diligence, and we will certainly do our part. And we just wanna have an understanding of sequencing, because
Yes.
obviously we have all of the boards to.
Sure.
before.
Yeah,
So we're
we're
not
sorry,
looking-
it's marky
Oh,
right
you
now.
don't- we
Can-
knew that going in,
Yeah.
and just trying to kind of.
Okay, the only thing that I ask you is that all the material that you're collecting, start assembling it into a package so that at least we have that for the record.
And I would like to say to you how grateful I am for your due diligence, because you have done quite a lot of research on this building, and you've been very responsive to the requests we've made to you, so I appreciate that.
Process.
That's right.
We'll figure it out.
Thank you very much.
I think this is Carol's.
And do we have another copy of the engineering report I can give to her?
Wait, I think the letters in there too.
This one. Okay, good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Karen.
I will drop one off